See me trying to get positioned here. I think that we're good. So we're going to go on and get started because, of course, even though people may not be on the actual call itself, uh, people that will listen later, they're not going to want to have me waiting, 2 or 3 minutes for those to get on the call. So let's go on and get started. We're going to be talking about quantumetics, biohacking reality, and we'll explain what that is. First and foremost, we're going to talk about quantumetics. Quantumetics is simply the merge of quantum mechanics and cybernetics. And it's basically emerging. So what we're doing is taking a practical, secular approach to that which is typically deemed spiritual or religious. So we're not going to be talking from a religious aspect. We're going to be talking about how your mind works to create the reality that you want to create. Now, quantumetics itself is actually a 12-month program. And what we're going to do is just kind of do an overview of that 12-month program in today's lesson. So it's going to be like an overview of telling you how mind works and how you can begin utilizing mind to your advantage. A lot of times, we hear people talking about metaphysics, law of attraction, law of assumption, and so forth. And it just sounds like it's so out of reach. What I want to do with the tool of quantumetics is help you begin to think purposefully to create the life that you desire. So that's what we're going to be doing today, is giving you tools so that you can actually begin to biohack, as we call it, your reality. And we do this all the time, but the problem is most of us are biohacking our reality unaware. So through the tool of quantumetics, what I want you to do is become conscious creators. And again, we're going to be coming from a non-religious perspective today so that you can begin saying, okay, how can I apply this stuff practically in my life today? And I often will get into you being a spiritual being. Today we're going to be talking about you as a energy being, a vibrational being. And again, what I want you to do is really make this stuff practical. And so that's the thing that I'm going to give you today when we talk about quantumetics and biohacking your reality. We can do this anytime. We just don't realize how powerful we are. I did some research the other day, and the research was this. If the human person, the human being, was given a price for all the technology and know-how and everything that's within that individual, how much will they be worth? Keep on listening, you're going to get a lot from it. How much will that individual be worth? Hold on to your seats. You just don't know how valuable you are. It was overwhelming when I thought about it because, when I was a kid, we had this program that was called the $6 Million Man. And there was a star by the name of Lee Majors. He was the husband at one time of Farrah Fawcett, beautiful model actress way back when. So I'm kind of aging myself. That's not important. But the $6 Million Man, when you thought about the $6 Million Man, you're like, man, that guy was worth a lot of money because they replaced one of his arms, one of his legs, so he was considered bionic. And we would think today, man, being worth $6 million, that's a lot of money. Back when it was, today is not so much. But, so again, let me go back to the research. I did the research and I said, what would the human person be worth if the technology within the human being was actually outsourced? And the approximation was this. $6 to $10 trillion, not billion dollars. The stuff that you have that rewires you, that makes you, makes you literally worth $6 to $10 trillion. This is how valuable you are. So now let's get into quantumetics. And since you understand how valuable you are, let's discover how to utilize the skill sets, the talents, the abilities that you have within you. And again, this is a 12-month program. So for those who are interested, of course it costs, but what I'll do is throughout the year and so forth, I'll give tidbits, tools from the program that will benefit you. But of course, if you really want to douse and really get into a process of really transforming your psyche, your person, who you are, and like I said, we can do this on our own, but it helps to have tools. So let's get into it today. Quantumetics, again, is a mixture between what we call quantum mechanics. So that's the psychological mental aspect, and cybernetics. That's the workings of it. That's how it works together. And what I've done is fuse these two technologies together to come up with quantumetics. What you're going to learn from quantumetics is how your mind works. You're going to learn how it works from a scientific perspective so that you can be more effective in using your thoughts, your words, your actions, your feelings, your attitudes, your states, your abilities. So let's go and get into it. So again, quantumetics is primarily the fusion of quantum mechanics and cybernetics. And of course, I incorporate, metaphysics in there and so forth, but that's the premise of it. And it's basically how your mind works and how you can use your mind more effectively to transform your world. So let's get it started. We kind of talked on quantumetics. I'm not going to rehash that. Okay, so now we want to get into the power of your thoughts. Your thoughts are creative. Now, what does that mean? From a secular standpoint, from a scientific standpoint, they've done studies through the CIA, and they've discovered that as we begin to place our attention on any given thing, if we begin to meditate, somebody in a completely different room will actually begin to see the picture of what it is that we've focused on for that period of time. And these two people have nothing in common. One person doesn't know the other person. Why do I say this? A lot of times we think about a person, an individual, and all of a sudden that individual gives us a call or we receive something from that individual and we're like, I was just thinking about that individual. That's because we're all connected. As an energy system, every one of us, we're connected. So being connected, if I transmit a thought to you persistently and consistently, often you're going to pick up on that thought. In a relationship, often I will say something and I'm talking to my spouse, for example, and she say, I was just thinking about that. This happens quite often. When I'm talking to friends or whatever, I may call a friend up and he or she will say, I was just thinking about you. I was going to call you, blah, blah, blah. We hadn't talked for a period of time, but all of a sudden we're at a vibrational match. So you got to understand your thoughts are creative. And we can use these creative thoughts in a positive way or a negative way. Now, let me speak of the negative way. Often we'll look at a kid and we'll say child, kid, boy, girl, and we'll say they're just like such and such parent. And then we start wondering why the child takes on the persona of the parent. Now we say, well, it was just biological, it was going to happen anyway. What if they picked up, and they do, on your predominant beliefs about who they are? So it's been proven in school systems where they've had educators and they would take a group of children, just an average, normal, everyday group of children, and they would tell the educator it would be a blind experiment. They would tell the teacher that this is a gifted bunch of students. Now, they've come from an urban area, whatever, but they're very gifted and they're talented. The teacher will go about treating those individuals as if they're gifted. At the end of the school year, those gifted children, so-called, excel far beyond expectation. Now, let's put this educator in a totally different classroom. In the same experiment, they would say that, this is a trouble group, they're probably not going to get anywhere. And the actual group was actually very promising. They were actually very smart children. But the educator went in with the ideology that this is going to be a trouble bunch of kids, and that's how their school year ended up for the most part. What am I saying to you? Lifestyle will always mirror our predominant beliefs. If we say that, for example, the next 4 years are going to be horrible and they're going to be the worst 4 years ever, then for us, that's going to be the next 4 years. But if I say that the next 4 years are going to be my most prosperous 4 years ever, and lives are going to be changed, transformed, rearranged, and so forth, then that's the 4 years that I'm going to experience. What am I saying to you, creators? I'm saying begin to sow the seeds of what you want to manifest, bring about in your reality as you begin. And we'll talk about some tools that will allow you to do that more efficiently and effectively. But as you begin sowing the seed, first and foremost, only thing you have to believe at first is simply believe that it's possible. what happens is once you start believing this is possible, life will begin to show you the evidence of the possibilities. I've seen this time and time and time again in my own life. You've also seen it in your own life. And when we say, well, I just knew I couldn't trust that person turned out to be untrustworthy. When we say there was just something special about that individual to you, there was something special that showed up. Now, everybody else in the world could say they're a cad, you can't trust them, blah, blah, blah. But for you, they show up differently. And that's because of your belief about that individual. Your thoughts have power. You have to begin directing your thoughts in a direction of what it is that you truly want to show up in your life. Far too often, and this is all of us, we focus on what it is that we don't want, and from a psychological level, from a Quantumetics level, then only thing that we can see at that moment is what it is that we don't want. If you want to change the dynamics of that, then begin focusing on what it is that you want to show up in your life. And understand this, we're told don't judge according to the appearance of a thing. Often we're looking on the exterior as the evidence. That's not the case. Science has proven that the thing that the individual, Henry Ford said it, if you believe a thing to be so or not, then you're correct. And I probably tore up that paraphrase, but you understand what it is that I'm saying. Whatever it is that you believe primarily, predominantly, that's what's going to most often show up in your world. It can't be otherwise. No matter what's going on in the world, if you believe that your world, that you're going to experience prosperity, you're going to start living from the mindset of abundance, prosperity, and so forth, and you're going to start seeking the evidence. And as seeking the evidence, what's going to continuously show up in your life is the evidence of prosperity. There's a term called paranoia. And we all know what paranoia is, believing that things are working against us. But there's another term that somebody had presented to me and reminded me of recently, and it's pronoia. And pronoia is this. It's believing that everything is conspiring for your good. What would happen if you took on the mindset that everything in your life is basically seeking your good? And you begun to look for the evidence of everything seeking your good. How would that transform your life? You're given to do this as an individual, as your individual creator of your world. You can begin to think accordingly. Far too many of us, we're thinking according to somebody else's belief. Now, what do I mean by that? I was talking to a client recently, and she was kind of stuck. But she was stuck because she was still being raised by the religion of her mother. Now, what do I mean by that? Everybody has their own beliefs. And Mr. Linder will say this, that we're all religious about something. This is absolutely correct. Even if we're atheists, we're religious about something. There's something that we believe. A lot of times, our programming, most of the time, our programming stems from early childhood. And whatever that indoctrination was up until, let's say, the age of 7, we tend to carry that indoctrination throughout the course of our life. And very few of us vary from that because that's our programming. And there's nothing that, for the most part, unless that person starts seeking what's true for them and disrupts the old programming, they tend to stay on that course for the rest of their lives until they die. This person is one of those individuals that's in transition, and she's seeking to go deeper, but she's been so tied into her old belief systems that she starts dealing with guilt when she starts making that change of thought. And many of us have dealt with this. When I started first hearing the principles and the teachings of Neville Goddard, I was kind of shaken because it shook the foundation of what I believed about religion. Then I started studying for myself. It's great to have teachers like Neville Goddard, Joseph Murphy, Joe Dispenza, Mr. Linder, whomever. But you have to get to a place that you have to decide what it is that you believe, pronoia, thank you, what it is that you believe for yourself. As you begin walking and living from that, what's going to happen is your life will begin to outpicture that new reality. Now, understand this, most people are not settled or secure enough in whatever it is that they believe. So when you start believing something contrary, they start becoming threatened, as it were, because now you're no longer believing what it is that they believe to be true. And this is absolutely okay, but for the individual that's not secure in his or her stance, whatever it is that they believe, then they're going to criticize you. You got to understand that the norm is going to criticize you when you step outside the box of the norm. And you have to be okay with it. That's in relationships, that's in finances, that's in your health, that's in every aspect of your life, in your spirituality. When you start thinking for yourself, whatever that looks like, my goal is never to tell you what to think, but that you think. And as you think, you're creating according to those thoughts, those words, those actions, those feelings, those states, those attitudes, those dispositions. You understand? As a conscious creator, you begin directing your thoughts to whatever it is. As I stated earlier, think on what it is that you most desirably want to show up in your world. As that is what it is that you're giving your attention to, that's what you're going to see more of. Now, does it mean that you're not going to see some of the other stuff? Absolutely not. That's called life. But the question is, how do we view this thing called life? Because depending upon your mental mindset, it's going to determine how successful or unsuccessful you are in this journey called life. So let's move forward. So understand the power of your thoughts. They're creative. That's scientifically proven. They're creative. So no matter what you believe, if it's in your world, you've played some part. If you want it out of your world, start this moment by simply changing your thoughts, your words, your actions, your feelings, your states, your attitudes, your dispositions. It starts one thought at a time. As you begin doing that, you're sowing a new seed, a new, as it were, a new brain connector, a synopsis, as it were, and they call that plasticity. And that's when you start making new connections within your brain. So as you begin doing that, you begin to, as we used to play with silly putty, and we could take that in whatever image you place that silly putty on, that image would come back up and you would see the image on the silly putty. Whatever you're imaging in your mind is going to be outpictured in the silly putty of this stuff called reality. It can't be otherwise. So let's move forward. Be mindful of your thoughts. Okay, I say this often. I say that I'm going to use this term today. You're an energy or vibrational being having a human experience. You're vibratory. And we call that cause and effect. We call that law of attraction, law of assumption. At this moment, you're vibrating something about money. You're vibrating something about relationships. You're vibrating something about health, education, religion, so forth. We're all doing so. The question is, are you happy with the vibrational match that's showing up in your life called reality? It says that as you vibrate, whatever it is that you're vibrating, you get into resonance of that vibration and you begin to make matches. You know, often we'll say that opposites attract. If I'm vibrating from a place of lack, then I'm going to attract lack. I'm not going to attract, as it were, abundance. If I'm operating or vibrating from a place of abundance, I'm going to attract abundance. Now, let me say this. Say that you're vibrating at a place of lack, but somehow money comes into your life. And money will always come into your life. Love will always come into your life, depending on how it shows up, but it will come. Health opportunities will always show up in your life. It's what you're vibrating at the moment, though, that determines if it stays. So, again, let's go back to the vibration of money. Money's easy. Say that you're vibrating lack, but abundance shows up in whatever form. Because you're vibrating at a place of lack, what's going to happen is you're going to vibrate that abundance, whether through a car payment, a bill out of nowhere, ill health. The money that you vibrated, you're going to also find a way to dissipate that energy, that money energy, because you're not at a vibrational match. Now, say that you're vibrating from a place of abundance, but you have very little money. What's going to happen is opportunities for making money, to attracting money into your life, are going to begin to present themselves. And you'll look at the world differently from a person that's operating from a vibration of lack or scarcity. You'll look and say, okay, this little money that I have, how can I invest it? How can I multiply it? How can I sow it? Where can I plant this seed? You know, creators that operate from a place of abundance, what they do is they operate and they see themselves as an investment in themselves. People that are operating from a place of lack, they see money going out, so they see it as a loss, even though this investment could be something that transforms their lives from where they're at to where it is that they want to be. But because they're operating from a place of lack, they can't see the benefit of being educated, investing in themselves. Money flows to those who love it. So as you think about it from a place, Jesus said it this way: make friends with money. Unrighteous mammon is what he called it, but he was talking about the things that we call money, the things that we trust in that bring about groceries and livelihood and so forth. So he said, but make friends with it. Get into the mindset of the ideology of it being your friend. Money is nothing solely but a tool. It's a medium of exchange between two or more spiritual beings. Let's say it this way: two or more energy beings, vibrational beings. We've agreed that for this exchange of this thing that I desire from you, that I'll give you this exchange of this thing that I have. And we often use the currency or the medium of something called money. In the past, they've used grain, they've used cattle, they've used salt. Salt at one point salt was the currency at one point. My whole point to you is, it's nothing more than a medium of exchange, but it really represents the individual spirit. You got to understand it. It doesn't represent some evil thing. It may be in the currency of this paper money or whatever, but ultimately it's still the representation of these energy beings. And we say that in place of me doing this thing, I'll exchange this thing we call money that I've saved or whatever, and it's a representation of who I am. As you understand that and you begin exchanging, so now you say, listen, how do I become more valuable? Then you become more valuable by finding out what it is that other people need and simply provide it to them. Anybody that you see in society that we deem successful monetarily, because people can have a lot of money but have some very other off issues in their lives, whether it be about relationships, other people, whatever. But they can be about knowing how to make money. We always equate people that know how to make money as ultimately being these successful people, but a lot of them are spiritually, emotionally bankrupt. So they may have a lot of money, but their character is suspect. So let's move forward. As we look at what it is that we want to manifest, when we're talking about money, ask yourself, how can I bring value to the marketplace? And understand this, we all have gifts and talents to bring value to the marketplace. We all do. It's just that many of us haven't fine-tuned these tools to bring value to the marketplace. A lot of us don't even believe that we have them. So we're starting at a negative anyway because we don't believe. I said it earlier for those who missed it, but let me go and touch on it real quick. I did a research study recently, and I said, how much would the human being be worth if the technology within that human being was put out into the marketplace? And in doing that research, the answer that came back to this. It said that the human being would be worth $6 to $10 trillion if the technology within the human being was put out to the marketplace. I didn't say $1 billion. I didn't say $1 million. I said an individual human being with the technology within them, if it was put out to the marketplace, whether we're talking about AI or whatever, AI could do exactly as a human, and AI is getting very good, but it's still not at the level of a human being. Now, it could be smarter, but it doesn't have the ability to look at and analyze things from a human perspective. So just be mindful. You're wonderfully crafted. You're this entity, this energy system that's created to do wonderful things. And I just want you to own how powerful you are. John Wick is pretty busy here. John, I suddenly woke up and was in this exact experience what happened to me. I feel like right now I'm in the Matrix with John Wick here. So thanks for sharing. Love you, guy. Listen, you're powerful. And I just want you to understand how powerful you are. And I want you to begin to walk in your power. But first and foremost, you got to own it. And in owning it, some people are going to look at you as though you're being arrogant or whatever. That's the average person. Most people, we've been taught to belittle ourselves, not to love ourselves and so forth. That's how we've been conditioned. In doing this, people can gather control of us. But when we are empowered and we begin to understand who we are, then nobody's going to control us. And understand, my goal is never to tell you what to think, solely to tell you that you are thinking. And because you are thinking, if you continue on a certain path, you're going to get a certain result. And that's the whole purpose of Mr. Lindo and I when we talk, is to let you know that as you think, you are, you do, you be, you have. And if you simply want to change that, simply start by changing your thoughts. You're a vibrational being, your energy system. And wherever you're directing that energy, and that's the whole purpose of Quantumetics, wherever you're directing that energy, it's going to determine what's showing up in your life. I just want you to be purposeful in your creation. So thank you, John. Love you, bro. So I just want you to be purposeful in your creation and think about who it is that you want to be. Let me say this. I got to say this. You're so powerful that if you can get in mind, I mean, literally get a picture in mind. This is what, when we look at scripture, ancient texts, and religious books, but also scientific books. And this is what the people that know. If you can get the image of in your mind of who it is that you want to be, do, or have, and you start living from that image, I can't even stress this enough because I want you to get it. If you start living from that image that you've imagined yourself to be, over a course of time, that's the person that's going to show up in your reality. We look at celebrities and athletes and so forth, and we think that they're so special. They're special in the sense that they understand this tool, that imagination, as Neville says, creates reality. When you begin understanding that you're a creative being, that you're an energy being, and whatever you're holding in energy must be, over a course of time, sometimes quickly, sometimes a little slower, but it must be outpictured in your reality. And I talk about Carl Runefelt because his story is so phenomenal. You know, young kid in Sweden, high school education, and all of a sudden he's imagining himself being rich. Working in a grocery store, if he had told anybody that he was going to be a billionaire, because that's what he is today, in less than 7 years, they would have laughed at him. What I'm trying to get you to see is that once you can begin to picture it in your mind, it's going to be outpictured in your life. You know, and some people say, well, Coach, do you have any money? I've manifested literally millions of dollars, but because I didn't understand the tools at the time, I also lost millions of dollars and the consequences that went with losing that millions of dollars. This stuff works. I don't say it as a boast because there's consequences to manifesting anything. You got to upkeep that thing that you manifest. People think that they can manifest a loving relationship. They can manifest better health. They can manifest more money and stay exactly as they are. You're not going to keep it because as you are wasn't enough to keep that in your life. You have to, people that know this. In order to keep that thing that you've manifested, you have to become the person that can keep that thing that you've manifested. Loving relationship. Let's use that as an example. You want to manifest a loving relationship, but you're a terrible person to be around. Listen, I've been a knucklehead, so I understand. I've been a knucklehead, and I know the consequences of being a knucklehead. I'm not as much of a knucklehead today. What I'm saying to you, you got a bad attitude and you think because you're handsome or you're pretty or whatever, that that's enough to keep that relationship. But then you keep wondering, why do I keep going through these relationships? You're not vibrating from a place of attractiveness. And I'm saying love now. Let's go and use the word love. Our attention is egotistic. It's self-centered. It's not loving towards the other individual. And we're told in this community, oh, you can manifest anything. You don't have to be anything you do. And so we believe that, but we don't realize that we're energy systems. As energy systems, whatever you're projecting, that's what's going to be drawn back to you. And so as we continue to project a negative attitude, that I'm all that and I don't have to treat you with respect or whatever, then that's what we're going to get back. But as we become more loving and we start saying, I seek your best interest, I want what's good for you, and you in turn want what's good for me, then we begin to operate from a place of understanding that we're all God's creating. As God's creating, we respect the Christ. Absolutely. Can you manifest a physical change? Is everything equal to me? You can manifest this physical change. Let me say that. Now, what we call equal is subjective. What you may think that you're vibrating equal, you still could be operating from a place of lack, for example. So since you're still operating, now you saying, well, I want to manifest abundance, I want to manifest abundance, but childhood trauma has got you believing, let's say, that evil, rich people are evil, for example. So anytime a little bit of money shows up in your life, for example, you're like, thank you, universe, blah, blah, blah. And then the money dissipates because at your core, you're trying to protect yourself from being what? Evil. So there has to be some clearing. It says that in order to attract, you absolutely are. We're all gods. So as gods, you got to, and listen, I know a lot of people get thrown off by hearing the term that you're gods. Again, I'm trying to keep this secular, but we're energy systems. What we know about the entity we call God. God is energy. It says God, energy can't be destroyed. It can't be, it's creative and so forth. It gives all these attributes of God. Likewise with you, when you vibrate at a vibrational, as gods, when you vibrate negativity, because you're a vibrational being, then what do you think that's going to come back to you? It can't be otherwise. We call that sowing and reaping. Whatever seed that you're sowing, you're not going to sow, for example, a kernel of corn and get an apple tree. It's impossible. If you're sowing a negative attitude, for example, as gods, and you keep sowing this negative attitude with everybody that you meet, pretty soon you're going to wonder why nobody wants to deal with you. It's because you're vibrating as gods that negative attitude. If you want the opposite, then you begin to send out loving attitudes, looking at other people's best interests, not ahead of you, not to be a rug or a mat. We're not talking about that. But you do unto others what you want to be drawn unto you. So as you begin to put out loving energy, prosperous energy, help energy, that's what's going to come back to you. And you're going to actually begin to surround yourself with like-minded people. And the truth of the matter is, even if you come across people that are not at that vibrational level, they're going to, over time, be repelled because they're not operating from where it is that you're operating from. So, answer your question, John, I have. That's the short answer today. Maybe one day I'll get into it. And the question was, for those who may be listening, have I experienced the promise? I have experienced the promise. It's been about 5 years, and I've had various visions and dreams beyond that. But listen, understand this, please. If I never had the promise, it would not have ever made me doubt my relationship with Source, known as God. Matter of fact, I probably had it because I didn't care if I had it, to be honest with you. It was just validation for what I already knew. I didn't need that experience to validate my relationship with Father. I didn't, and nor do you. Once you begin to understand who you are, just understand that I'm a creative being, that I'm created in the image and the likeness of this divine energy we call God. As you begin operating from that, you're going to begin to see the outpicturing of the evidence of that. But you don't need this thing called the promise to know that you are sons and daughters of the Most High. You don't need it. So I'm not saying that to discount the promise or anything like that. I'm just saying it doesn't determine who you are as a spiritual being. So, John, that's another conversation. If you want to speak offline privately, we can talk, but that's another conversation. Um, we're making this stuff too religious. This is why I'm telling you, you don't need the promise. You don't have to believe what Neville believed, per se, to be spiritual. You're spiritual in spite of. You don't have to be Buddhist. You don't have to be Christian. You don't have to be Muslim. You're spiritual in spite of. These things are just tools to help us understand, but they're man tools. They're man tools. It has nothing to do with who you are as a creator. All this stuff that we talk about is man-made tools. Religion is us trying to get it close to God. Spirituality is us realizing that we are. You are divine beings, period. You don't need any evidence. You don't need any promise experience. You don't need to be born again or whatever. You are spiritual beings, period. Okay, let's move forward. Okay, so again, your energy beings having a human experience. John, I can't stay there, bro. I got to move on. So I love you, but I got to move on. So reprogramming limited beliefs. Like I said early on, most of what we believe has been programmed at an early age. And let me say this, John, congratulations for experiencing that experience. But like I said, to anybody else that hasn't had what Neville called the promise experience, it doesn't make you any less spiritual. Only thing it does is it's just validation. But I didn't personally need the validation. I just happened to receive it. So you're spiritual in spite of. That's what I want you to get. Okay. So, and that's even starting reprogramming those limiting beliefs. Quit believing that something outside of you has to happen before you can be more spiritual. Start being more spiritual, and the somethings outside of you are going to start to happen. That's the key. Start owning who it is that you are as individual creative beings. As you begin owning that, you're going to actually reciprocate the fulfillment of what it is that you're owning. So just own that I'm powerful, that I'm loving, that I'm a creator, because all of those things are true. In spite of outward expressions of things religious things that need to happen. They don't have to happen. You just have to own them. The funny thing is, when you start owning them, those religious experiences that people say you must have to know that you're whatever, they're going to start showing up. But they'll show up as your experience. They won't be anybody. Let me stress this. When you have, let's say, we'll call it the promise or being born again, whatever you call it in the vernacular of the religious space that you're in. When you have that experience, understand this. It's going to be uniquely yours. Out of 8 billion people, nobody's going to have the exact same experience that you have. Quit chasing and trying to find out what other people have done so that you can validate that. Well, if they've done it this way, let me try to do it this way. It's not going to work for you. This infinite intelligence we call God is going to do it uniquely through you, as you. It's going to be your own unique experience. Many of you probably have already had the experience, but you wrote it off because it didn't look like Neville Goddard's or Joseph Murphy's or Joe Dispenza's or whatever religious teacher that you can come up with. It's not going to look like theirs. It's going to be your own unique experience. And as my sister says it, stop giving your power away. This is one of the byproducts of when we start reprogramming ourselves. I spoke of a client recently earlier, and she's stuck because she's still stuck in the religious dogma of what she was indoctrinated with as a child. And it's hard for her to make the transition knowing that the divine is in her. But I told her that when the divine speaks, understand this, it's going to sound a lot like you. And that's the confusion. Many of you are looking for this booming voice to come out of the clouds and so forth. It's going to sound a lot like you. And a lot of times, as my sister said a moment ago, it's going to sound like intuition. It's going to sound like a hunch. It's going to sound like, oh, this idea that came out of nowhere, eureka, you know? But as you begin acting upon those eureka moments, as it were, Source is going to start giving you more and more. And pretty soon, you'll be the Esther Hicks. You'll be the people that now they're speaking. We're all channeling God. Let me say that again. Each and every one of us, we're channeling God. But we're channeling God as us. And because we're so close to the still small voice when it speaks, we say, oh, that was just that, or that was a great ideal, or whatever, and we write it off. And then we say, well, divine spirit never speaks to me. The divine spirit is always speaking. It's us who are failing to listen. You're energy beings. Once you get into the vibration of being energy beings, and you start believing, listening to, operating from, being aware of, you're going to experience more of it. But until you own it, and until you stop thinking that you got to have somebody else's experience, whoever it is, and realize that divine source, energy, divine intelligence, whatever you want to call this entity called God, wants to do something uniquely through you. And as you begin to experience your unique experience and you begin sharing that unique experience and you own that unique experience, what you're going to find is you're going to have more of those and more of those. And pretty soon you're going to understand there's nothing that can separate me from this divine energy, life force, known as life, as God, as reality, whatever. Because it says that in you, it lives, moves, has its existence. We're also told apart from this divine entity known as God, whatever you call that energy, life force, you can do nothing. This is absolutely true. This is not some religious jargon. Once, and listen, you only need to go to any funeral. You only need to go to any funeral to know what I'm saying is true. When life force, God, energy, source, is taken out of that individual, the body is nothing more than a shell. I say that you're energy beings having a human experience. Your body is a vehicle of travel for God's Spirit. Thank you. And it's To the Moon. Yeah. Carl Roomfeld's, the podcast is called To the Moon, for those who are interested in checking out Carl. But understand this outward shell, the moon shell, thank you. Appreciate you. This outward shell is nothing more than a vehicle of travel for the spirit. Now, why is this important? If you understand that the outward shell is nothing more than a vehicle of travel for this energy, the energy system within you, then now you can understand who it is that you are. Your life force. You're an extension of the divine, the allness, as John said earlier, known as God. Whatever you call it. Again, I don't want to make this particular study religious. It's kind of hard to get away from it. I keep using energy, vibration, and so forth in place of spirit because I don't want you to turn off and say, oh, this is another religious lesson. I want you to understand this is who you are, no matter what your religious belief. You don't even have to believe religiously. You're vibrational creatures, absolutely. So in understanding that, and you understand that the whole universe, multi-universe, whatever you want to call it, is energy, operating from energy, then you begin to understand that you're a part of this and you can't be separated. But you also understand that there's no separation between you and that person that you may not like. We're all connected. But what it is that we're transmitting to that other person returns back to us. So we have to be mindful. It's not about them, it's about you and what you want to have in your own life. So let me move forward because I'm going to try to complete this thing in the next few moments here. So you got to start thinking differently. That's the purpose of saying that you got to begin to reprogram your limiting beliefs. There's no limitation in the universe except believing. So uh, it's true. It's true. But society has made it that way, Amanda. You know, society has made it that we're hung up on the physical body. Listen, it's a beautiful instrument. I love having my body. You know, I love trying to take care of my body and so forth. But it's ultimately not who we are. And we won't, no matter what anybody tells you, we won't take it with us. We have multiple billions of people who have gone on before us and died, and nobody has taken says physical body cannot enter into the spiritual realm. It's not made for that. It's a vehicle of travel for our spirit, but it's not to make the transition. So take care of it the best you can, but you're going to leave it here. So let's move forward. I'm probably going to have to, I'm only going to do half of this lesson, then we'll do the other half next Sunday because I want to make sure I cover everything and I don't want to rush through to get you this information. But again, we're talking about quantumetics. And again, this is a mixture between cybernetics and quantum mechanics. And basically, there's a fusion here. So one's the mechanical and the other one's the behind the scenes. We call it spiritual. But the energy portion of it. So that's the quantum mechanics of it. The cybernetics is the physical thinking, processing, and what happens at that level. So let's move forward. So this last point that I want to cover is the influence of those past experiences. You can rearrange, change past experiences like you can future. So remembering, I like to say it this way, that remembering the past is like imagining for your future. You can choose to shift those old thinking patterns. Now, many of us, because we're so close to them, we think that they're fixed. I love mine too. I love my entire being. I love even the ego aspect of me. I love my body. I love energy source that we call God gave us all of this. So there's no, he didn't create man, woman at any point and say that portion's evil. We as human beings, we started labeling. There was somebody in the on my YouTube channel, and they were talking about the evils of this world and the body and so forth, and the body serving Beelzebub. Your body is going to serve who you give it permission to serve. Whether you serve good or what we call error, I didn't want to say evil, whether you serve good or error, that's on you. You are given to choose. And God's not going to stop you and say, well, no, you can't choose that. We've been given to choose. As divine creators, we've been given dominion over this thing called life. Now, the dominion that we've been given is dominion over our thoughts, our words, our actions, our feelings, our states, our attitudes, our dispositions, and so forth. But as you begin controlling that inner conversation, whether it be about the past or what it is that we're imagining about our future, and I've talked about the future in a kind of round the circle way. When you're imagining, you're creating your future. The thought that you're thinking at this moment is advancing into your future. Those negative energies that you've been holding in the past, how do you get rid of them? The best way, the best tool, let me say it this way, that's been given to us to let go of that negative energy that we keep carrying forward into our future from our past is forgiveness. I like to say that forgiveness is probably one of the most selfish acts that you can practice. You're like, Coach, what do you mean? That's, that's humbling. That's, loving people. Let me explain what I mean as we're winding down. when I say that forgiveness is one of the most selfish acts that you can practice, forgiveness isn't as much about the other person as it is about you. As you forgive, and let me go back. I tried not to do this, but I can't help but to do it. I didn't want to use scripture, but I got to use it because it's important. So it says, if you if you fail to forgive, that your heavenly Father won't forgive you. Now, from a religious standpoint, we've been told that God's going to judge it. It doesn't mean that. The God that's failing to forgive is you. So let me explain. We talked about it already. We're energy systems. Operating as an energy system, whatever we're putting out, it's like a boomerang for those who are like from Australia, so they know exactly what I'm talking about, and it comes back to us. So the God in you, the energy source in you, the energy source in you says, okay, I'm sending out unforgiveness. I'm sending out love. I'm sending out abundance. I'm sending out health. I'm sending out whatever it is that I'm sending out. Life, reality, acts as a mirror, and it transmits that image that we've created in our image and our likeness and our imagination, and it's reflected back to us. So it says this, that if you don't forgive, your Heavenly Father, the God, the energy source in you that makes up you as you, won't forgive you. It simply means that you're not forgiving yourself. So when I say that forgiveness, love, abundance, health is the most selfish thing that you can do by sending it out, because life becomes a reflector and it becomes a mirror to you, and you see it back in your own life. It's the Father in you, the God in you, the energy source in you that's not forgiving. You can only receive what it is that you're putting out. So as you understand that life reflects to me what it is that I'm transmitting, then we become more mindful in what it is that we're transmitting. Guys, I can talk. I could go on. I'm going to cut this lesson in half, so next week we'll cover the other half of the other 5 points. Again, we're talking about quantumetics, and this is you understanding how mind works from a secular level. I'm trying to use as much secular talk so that you can understand we're doing this anyway. I don't want you to just think that this is something that happens spiritually, religiously, and then you miss that I'm doing this anyway. It's like the kid on Home Alone. Guys, I love you. I'm going to cut it here. And for those, I think 1 o'clock's good. I thought that the dogs would be barking and carrying on at 1 o'clock, but they were very good and patient with me. So I appreciate them in the background not doing that. So I think that 1 o'clock is a good time. It allows me to work out and do what I need to do and then be on the call. So for those who are interested in showing up next Sunday, look for me about 1 o'clock-ish. Let's say it that way. Life tends to happen and things come up. So, but 1 o'clock-ish, look for me, and I look forward to seeing you. Some of you guys that will be seeing this will be seeing the recording of this. If you want to see more of this and hear more of this, tune in Sundays at about 1 o'clock. And love you. I'm glad that you showed up from England. I appreciate you. Love you. Appreciate you. Hey guys, love you. Take care.